Hi, welcome back. This is Andrew Sears again, and I'm going to go over the instructions for your final project. This final project is fairly complex. If you combine all the components of it, is going to end up being over half your grade. So it's really important. So there's three parts to it. The first part is focused on yourself. So you're going to do a personal cross-cultural assessment and leadership growth plan. Then the second two are going to be focused on your organization. So the first part or I guess item number 2 is going to be just the assessment. Where is the organization cross-culturally? And then the third part is going to be focused on recommendations. So this top part goes over some of the specifics of how to, the formatting for this, but the big picture is write this as if you're writing it for, a nonprofit organization. It needs to be business writing. It doesn't necessarily need to be academic writing. You do need to have citations though. So try to make it as appropriate as you can for business while also including some citations. And here's the details on that. So part 1, let me go into that. And each of these are going to be, fairly substantial. So some of you are taking this as a graduate student and some as undergraduate. So the difference largely is in the amount of depth and the page requirement. So part 1 is 8 to 10 pages for graduate, 6 to 8 pages for undergraduate. And the basic idea is we're kind of doing a scenario. We're saying, and in some cases this may actually be true for you, we're saying that in your organization, your supervisor or someone in leadership has tasked you to first lead by example. You're going to create this cross-cultural strategic plan, but the idea is if you're going to lead, you need to lead yourself first. So you're going to develop your own cross-cultural growth plan. So you're going to take all the material that you've gone through in this course and any other knowledge you have, and you're going to create what's called a synthesis. You're going to try to pull it all together. So there's going to be several parts of this. For part 1, step 1 is going to be providing a summary of all the cultural assessments you took so far in this course. So this is going to happen at week 4. And all those are going to be elements of your own cultural identity. And so you're going to look at your week 1 cultural profile, your ethnic identity development. Each of these you're going to be asking what are the implications for growth and what are next steps, your histories with social class and your class identity, the cultural dimension spreadsheet that you did for yourself personally, and then analysis across race, class, and gender. Now I realize that's a lot of data. I don't want you to focus on the data. If all you do is just list data, that's not going to be writing a paper. That's just, doing a brain dump. What we really want you to do is to say, based on that data, do the really, really hard thinking of what does that really mean? And then the other part that you're going to have to synthesize, and what a synthesis is it's taking all the pieces and pulling it together, is what you've learned from leading with cultural intelligence. And all of those, you're basically, what you're pointing at is how you need to grow. So that's the first section. Then the next section is going to be writing out your own philosophy of cross-cultural leadership based on what you've learned so far. So what are the key principles that you'd want others to learn? So say you're going to do a training at your organization. What would you want be some of the key principles you'd want them to learn for effective cross-cultural leadership? And then the third section is going to be to develop a cross-cultural growth plan for yourself for the following time periods. And, it doesn't have to be exactly these, but 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years. So say I'm going to try to start serving the Latino community. In 1 year, I'm only going to be able to make so much progress, but over 10 years, I could probably make tremendous progress. And part of that also is I want you in your plan to think about how you're going to grow in your head knowledge cognitively. This course is largely 95% going to be cognitive. Heart knowledge, which is really the social development process, in your hands, your experience in leading cross-culturally or working cross-culturally. So all of that's part 1, focused on yourself. Now, for your final project, you're going to have to come back after you've gone through the next 4 weeks in the course, and you're going to need to revise part 1 based on the additional learnings from the course and feedback from faculty. If you don't revise it, then your faculty should grade you accordingly, because you need to be incorporating other elements. In weeks 5 through 8, there's going to be additional material that really would inform some of these things you wrote in section 1. Then in part 2 is your cross-cultural organizational assessment. So that's going to be a little shorter than your personal assessment and plan. And so 5 to 7 pages graduate, 4 to 5 pages undergraduate. And what you're going to do, again, you're going to be, and this is going to happen, I think at week 6 or 7. And you're going to be looking at your current client. So, and you're going to be using the some of the tools that we had, the cultural clusters, languages, Holsted's dimension, social class, and you're going to go through and apply that to your current client. Now, let me be clear what this is. For many of you in nonprofit organizations, you may have written grants or seen an annual report where you describe who it is you serve. So this would be that section, but it would be broken out across demographic data. And then also, who's your leadership, who's your staff. So that's what the current clients is. It's who are you currently serving? And then the target market would be, you might be serving at a rescue mission or Salvation Army or some sort of organization that serves the homeless. And you may find that the homeless in your community is different than who you're currently serving. And so that would be your target market. Or you might serve at-risk youth, and it might be different than what you're currently serving. So this would be the larger market. If this was a business plan, this would be the market research section. Again, your organization may have a lot of information about the local organization or the local community that it's trying to serve that it uses in grants, or you could use data from the census. Don't just say, here's the census in my city and we're trying to serve the entire city, unless you're really trying to serve the entire city. Say who you're focused on. And it's fine if your organization's a Black church and you're going to serve the Black community, but what is the Black community in your city? If you're in Boston, the Black community is extremely diverse. It's less than half African American and a lot of immigrants, or Caribbean American. So then the third part, and this is really where I want you to put a lot of the effort, is cross-cultural analysis, and explain and analyze the primary cross-cultural challenges the organization is facing. And you're going to have different stakeholders with different needs. So what cross-cultural challenges do these differences create? Based on the cultural dimensions profile spreadsheet, discuss key differences between your organization's existing and future clients and stakeholders. And I want you to add that spreadsheet to the appendix. Race, class, and gender, the same type of question. So where do you fit on the race, class, and gender diagram? What are your strengths and weaknesses across these dimensions? And what are your recommendations of how your organization can grow? Then the fourth part, and this is, again, this is going to be the synthesis. So a lot of these things, this is analysis. So analysis breaks things up into parts. And, after you go through all these surveys, your brain may be broken because you're going to say, okay, there's 50 different cultural dimensions and I'm just confused. But what the competing values framework does is it's going to tie this back in with the whole health of your organization. And what I want you to do is take the competing values framework that you did, and I want you, the OCAI test, and I want you to look at what do you need to do to get to the preferred situation you're trying to get to on that test, and what quadrants are you going to need to change the most. So out of that, just create a synthesis. So I want this to be something that if your boss looked at, or someone in your leadership in the organization looked at, that they would say, okay, this is helpful. I don't want just a bunch of data again. So again, whenever you complete part 3 of this project, I'm going to want you to revise part 1 and 2 based on the learning. So part 3 is going to be the longest. And, for each of these, if you go over a little bit, that's fine. We don't want you to go under, and don't play, huge games with, making things quadruple spaced on the pages. But the spacing requirements listed at the top. So anyway, based on all of this analysis, this is where you're going to create your synthesis. So What are the key challenges? Look at your stakeholder analysis, copy your post from the stakeholder mapping assignment to the appendix. Describe the various tiers in your organization's cross-cultural sphere of influence, and stakeholder maps, and essentially assess how do you effectively serve all stakeholders. There's going to be tensions between these. Step 3, and this is one of the most important, is how are you going to measure cross-cultural organizational effectiveness? Most larger ministries, churches, and nonprofits are going to measure their progress towards some sort of outcomes, but are you breaking that out across demographics? And if you aren't, make recommendations for how to do that, because that's going to be really important to see, are you making progress? So that's what this is about. What additional data and how can you decrease outcome disparities? And then some of the other things are combining other lessons. So how do you have an Indigenous leadership development strategy in your organization? And part of that is, if you start really pushing cross-cultural concepts in your organization, a lot of people are going to feel guilty. That's not the goal. What the goal is train people, because there's this phrase, what got you here won't get you there. People need to be trained, and what you need to do in this section is write a professional development plan for your team to continue to grow in cultural competencies. One thing I didn't state, but any of the material that's publicly available on the web, or any of the material that I wrote myself, you're free to use in training in your organization. So you can incorporate parts of that, and you can incorporate other material. And then assessing what are key factors that might make progress in cross-cultural strategic plan difficult. For us, City Vision, we're a small growing school, so budget is really the biggest thing, but you may have other aspects that would make this very difficult. So ultimately, what you're trying to do is create a synthesis, pull all the puzzle pieces together of how the organization can do better cross-culturally. That's the big picture. If you haven't done that, then you need to go and revise your paper again, and just keep in mind that that's the goal we're going for. So in finalizing the report, what I want you to do is to revise parts 1 and 2. You're going to be, each week, you're going to do an executive summary of materials. So you're going to copy that into the appendix that says executive summary of materials. You're going to remove all these instruction pages, the ones that I'm showing you right now, update the table of contents by right-clicking on it and clicking the update field, and update the entire table of contents. So you need to update your organization name, your date, your name, and then this is how you would update it. You right-click, then you go to update field, and you say update the entire table once you're done. And you're going to have all these sections that you're going to need to paste material in. So as you go through, whenever you're done with part 1, you're going to write all your part 1 in this section. And then you're going to do part 2 in the next section. Then you're going to do part 3 there. And then all your appendices, you're going to cut and paste from Excel or other things. And one thing that's important on cutting and pasting in Excel, let me see if I can just show you this real quick, is whenever you're cutting and pasting from Excel, so say you try to do the cultural dimension spreadsheet, you're going to have to copy this, and you'd go, let's see, I'll just hit Control C to copy, but under the paste, to paste in Excel, you have to go to Paste Special, and you have to say Microsoft Excel Worksheet Object. And then what that's going to do is going to make it look right, so it doesn't look crazy once you paste things in here. So so you'll need to paste each of those sections, your demographic data form, your stakeholder map, your OCAI summary chart, your personal competing values framework chart, your executive summary of your materials. And then the last thing I want to talk about is what the paper grading rubric. So this is going to apply to all your papers in this course. And the most important thing to look at is, what are the criteria? 70% of your weight is this thing of practical use and value to your organization? So your faculty is someone who's run nonprofit organization and ministry, and they're going to look at it as if they were the executive director and you gave this to them. And, also there's going to be a lot of third-party templates. How much value are you adding to those? So an A is basically meets the quality expected of senior staff. And then 20% is showing, do you have mastery of the course concepts? And then 10% is going to be writing professionalism. So as you go through that, then hopefully that'll be a guide, and your teacher will use this, your instructor will use this in grading you. So if you have any questions, just ask your instructor. Thanks a lot.